Well, hey folks, it's your old pal King Krampus here. Welcome back to Total Party Skills. I want to speak a little bit about something I've mentioned before in an earlier Rifts video when I was just kind of giving my basic thoughts and impressions on the Savage Worlds Rifts box set. And in terms of just like, ranking the various editions of Rifts and kind of how I stack them up, and the fact that, oddly, I would say, in my opinion, the best version of Rifts is Chaos Earth. They just finally got their hardcovers out. Had promised some bonus material in it, which might actually be kind of like the drag of buying it. Like the hardcover itself is like really nice. It's worth having, but I was hoping that they would have put psychic rules in the main books, considering that you are able to randomly have psychic powers, and even though Rifts Chaos Earth is back compatible with the entire Rifts catalog, what if by some weird chance this was the only rule book you had to go with it and you have no psychic powers to provide? A little bit of a slip up on their case, but other than that, conceptually speaking, it's the best Rifts. And why do I say that? Because it sets so immediately after the Cataclysm begins at the end of the 21st century. It's so much easier to convey what's going on to fresh players who are not, all that caught up on all the Rifts lore. And it's so disassociated with the classic Rifts era, which is like 400 years later, that players who are used to all that information, the slate's all clean. Everything's completely divorced. All your events, all the time you spend adventuring in Rifts Chaos Earth, you can build up a whole like new kingdom, little corner of civilization, be great heroes, and it's still centuries of apocalyptic mayhem in between that and the established original Rifts timeline that, have all your deeds become just a fading memory that maybe only a small little corner of the world is any at all aware of and probably remembers through distorted legends. The back compatibility, though, does allow you to bring in things from other Rifts books and use them in new ways. Personal things I find fun for Rifts Chaos Earth is to like deal with the fact that Atlantis reappears, but it's not yet controlled by the Splugorth, and you could potentially have a group of NEMA soldiers, get sent to investigate this continent that just appeared, and like have them have some of the very initial first encounters with Splugorth slavers or Kitani or so on and so forth. Also, I kind of feel like there's something to be done with the Megaverse in Flames book in terms of the various minion war armies from both Hades and Divil. It's mentioned that when they first launched their campaign to invade Rifts Earth, some of them were sent back in time and arrived during the Chaos years of the 200-year Dark Age, which this is set at the beginning of. And so you kind of have some ready-made NPC villains that you can throw into a campaign just by selecting like, well, it'd be funny if maybe Overlord Shard and his army, instead of showing up where they're supposed to show up according to their plans in the book, showed up 300 years prior and ended up having to fight the good folks at NEMA. And speaking of NEMA, the Northern Eagle Military Alliance, which is kind of like a future North American Union light kind of thing where Canada, Mexico, and the United States are all kind of like sharing military duties and all that kind of stuff. It's one of the things that gives us a good advantage over other Rifts is that focal lens for what the characters are from, what they're doing, how they're trained, makes it so that you automatically have a real natural reason for your characters to be adventuring together. If you could say, because of the open-endedness of the original Rifts and the broad palette of different kinds of characters that you can select for it, kind of makes it a little hard sometimes to, justify why all these people are hanging out, especially at the very beginning. That's why, in terms of like running, regular Rifts, I personally suggest to other game masters to like don't allow your players to have access to everything. Have a real refined list of options for the starting part of the world where they're beginning at and the stuff that should be there. And then as they adventure, if they lose a character, maybe they can bring in something more exotic that's related to where they're currently adventuring in when they need a new character and that kind of stuff. This eliminates all that because it just has everyone working through NEMA. If you do want more civilian type classes, Palladium does have a zombie game, although I would actually recommend Systems Failure as backup material. It has a quick run through of all the psychic rules that this book is missing. And I feel like its quasi-post-apocalyptic character classes have a more Rifts feel to them, you know, using stuff like splatterpunks and all that kind of stuff. The bonus material that isn't here is it gives some stuff about basically kind of like regular military forces and what they're up to in the Cataclysm. I kind of felt like that. Like I said, if there's a significant flaw of this book is I feel like they put the wrong bonus material in it, and I'll leave it at that. But there's really not much else to say. You know, it's there's not a whole lot of world material for it. In some ways, you don't really need it. It's close enough to how our world is right now in terms of layout and geography that, you know, like you don't really need a source book to tell you, you know, all about Wyoming or Wisconsin or Texas. Because, you know, you can read a newspaper. It's not all exotic and strange like it is in the, you know, post-apocalyptic calendar when the coalition's around and all that kind of shit. But also, I kind of like that because... if you're someone who feels constrained by the heavy amount of lore that Rifts has, that ditches it all. And like I say, you can use the stuff from other Rift source books in terms of DBs and monsters and stuff, however you want now, because they're fresh and there's not a lot of material contradicting what you're doing. In terms of its source books, it's had a psychic Scream source book, which I guess is going to finally introduce psychic characters properly into the setting, but who knows when they're going to finally get around to that. The fact that he hired over the guy from Savage Worlds is going to now be the creative director at Palladium Books. Hopefully that is actually going to like get some of their products, you know, out of that little log jam that they all seem to be in terms of development and only having a handful of writers that actually end up write anything for Palladium. They do have a couple nice, cheap source books that go well with it that you would want if you do pick up Rifts Chaos Earth. The Rise of Magic, out of all of them, is probably my favorite because it brings in like kind of like fresh new magic classes and kind of a different set of spells than what you get in like the normal Rifts Book of Magic and all that kind of stuff. Although, once again, because of the way Palladium's rules are, all that is still available and to use. But this is for people who are just now rediscovering that magic is even possible. So it's not like they've built up great catalogs of spell knowledge and items and all that kind of stuff. They're still figuring it out, and I kind of like that. Also, Creatures of Chaos, I recommend. It just has like some more demons and other kinds of interesting supernatural oddities to throw at your player character groups. Like I said, it mixes and matches well. Hades and Dival are good dimension books to also pair up with this, so you have like a broad palette of different kinds of factions of demonic creatures. But there's some actually really, really interesting things to be found in here, so like I recommend it. Of the other source books they've put out, the one I recommend the least is Chaos Earth Resurrection. It's a zombie crawl. It does have some interesting things about how the zombies work. I'm a bit more questionable about what is making the zombies, and but you know, players aren't ever likely to actually find out all the specific details behind that anyway. So you know, mysterious dark obelisk from another world making the dead rise. That's all they need to know. The fact that you do have like these kind of assembly line undead with bionic parts mixed up into them, like there's some interesting stuff in there. But considering like the broad availability of resources already, you know, out there that you can use for Rifts, I felt like a whole book devoted just purely to a zombie plague. That's like way thicker than like their other like this book should have been like this thick, but well, whatever. They're not perfect, but I mean, I guess that's just kind of Palladium in general. But of the various versions of Rifts, specifically of Rifts, it's worth checking out. So anyway, on that note, don't forget to tell me that, you know, Palladium is a terrible company and everyone who likes Palladium are like ugly or, you know, whatever fucking hang up you seem to have, you assholes. Check out my stuff on Drive-Thru RPG. You can just look up Total Party Skills. I got a bunch of different books, including some post-apocalyptic books. Just put out my first source book for Amazon Time Barbarians. And I'm going to be doing another review later on something that I just put out for Expedition to Ancient Egypt. You can also find me on Twitter at Party Skills. And I guess that's it. Be sure to hit like and subscribe. Like how old's your daughter? I don't know. Something. Give me something. It's Christmas, goddammit. Have a good one. Stay waspinated.